start the next session, which is a dialogue, how to practice yoga beyond our mats, with question and answer. So if you're interested, you can start writing questions on the chat on your live stream. So we have amazing panelists, Anouk, Harmony Slater, David Swenson, Nadine McNeil, and Vikram Singh, and it will be moderated by Harmony. So please bring everyone in. And just quickly, I would like to give just a quick introduction. So David Swenson is in Texas, Austin, and he is one of the most senior Ashtanga teachers. He's in I'm bringing him in now. And we met him at the Ashtanga Yoga Conference years ago. And I kind of chased him, please support Yoga Gives Back, please support Yoga Gives Back. And now he's our advisor, and he's been helping us to support our cause and raise funds and awareness in many events. So thank you so much. And Anouk Prop, she's a longtime ambassador, most dedicated woman and yoga teacher, psychotherapist, who has even climbed Mount Kilimanjaro to raise 10,000 euros years ago with her father, and took Dinabandhu Orphanage children's dreams to the top of the Kilimanjaro and left it there hanging like a flag. And anyways, she has done so much for Yoga Gives Back. So thank you. She's joining from Belgium. And Nadine McNeil, we just met this year when she joined our global gathering for India, and India was going a crazy crisis early this year with a second wave. And Nadine is from Jamaica. And since then we talked, and she joined as an ambassador too. So thanks, Nadine, for joining us today. And Vikram, we met earlier this year when he generously came up with this idea of donating Yoga Gives Back from Modo Yoga online karma class, right? During, I think it was already COVID time. You were in Goa. And since then we talked, and I was just fascinated about his depth of appreciation of yoga and wisdom. And so thank you for joining from Goa. And David is here from Austin, Texas. And finally, Harmony Slater, who also has been an ambassador for many years. I think we met at also Ashtanga Yoga Conference, like I did with David. And as usual, I kind of chased her to become ambassador. And and you've been dedicated ambassador for many years now. And today, thank you for taking the role of moderator. So I'll hand it to you, Harmony. Thank you, everyone, to be here.
Thank you, Kayoko. So nice to see everyone. Welcome. Nice to have you all here to talk about how to take our yoga practice beyond the mat. So this is obviously a big topic that can go into many, many different directions. It is one of my favorite topics because I feel like the essence of yoga happens actually off the mat, even though what we mostly see is things happening on the mat. So I guess the first question that I'm going to ask is, what does it mean to you personally to take yoga beyond your mat? And what does it look like? How does it show up in your daily life, or in your daily practices, or in your daily routines? So I guess I'll ask David Swenson first.
Oh, well, honestly, I'd have to say, if it's not happening off the mat, is it really yoga? It's only on the mat, maybe it's exercise. And so what's happening after we step off the mat is the true test to what we learned while we were on the mat. And the challenge is the world does not care that we just did primary series or whatever it was. They really don't. The person will still take your parking space or cut in front of you or be rude to you or whatever. So the challenge is to somehow take what we've gained on the mat and use it throughout the rest of our day. I have this image of how it feels. It's a bit like the old Star Wars or Star Trek movies, and we're in the spaceship and the enemy comes and attacks us and they're shooting these missiles at us. And there's a force field. We push a button, there's a force field, and for a while these missiles are bouncing off. After some time, the shield starts to weaken. We either have to get out of there or find a way to re-energize it. I feel that the practice creates this sort of pranic energy filtration system, meaning we cannot control what's happening out there, but we can control how we respond and react to the challenges of life. So doing yoga, if I have this pranic force field, the problems that come are either deflected or slowed down, and I'm going to respond differently. And so that's just an image I have of it, and that's how I think that it has been of benefit to me in my life. Yeah.
I love that image. So it kind of creates a buffer in a way between you and the things that might trigger you.
It helps me to respond with more clarity, sensitivity, and calmness to the challenges that otherwise will just, it feels raw. Otherwise, the things that are hitting us, what do we turn to for the escape, right? So even in the 70s, you know, when I was growing up, I was doing yoga. All of my friends were getting high, taking all kind of drugs. And so far in my life, I haven't taken any drugs. I have nothing against people that want to do it. They were all the fun people to be around. But even back then, I used to say, yoga gets me high. Because it was this feeling I had that I had control over, that I could do this thing, and it gave me this cool sensation of more sanity than if I didn't do it.
So nice. I think we can all relate to that feeling. How about you, Anouk? How do you practice yoga or take yoga off the mat, or how does it show up in your life?
Yeah, for me, I see a yoga as a mirror, or at least the practice. So the practice on the mat is a mirror for me. So whatever I encounter during my practice, during the asana practice, but also in pranayama or meditation, all the obstacles that I see within myself, I try to take that with me during the day. So it teaches me a lot about how I am and the way I function, but also in relation to other people, in relation with my work. So yeah, for me, it is really like a mirror. So that's one part, but then the other part is also when I look at the yamas and the niyamas, which are for me very important as well in the yoga practice. That's something for me too, to take that into my daily life and to practice that in that sense as much as possible. And I also find that when my practice, I'm practicing for 15 years now. And in the beginning, it was more focused on the asana practice and more the physical part, of course. And that's also the whole idea of the practice, to enter the physical body first. And then throughout the years, I noticed that, these deeper layers are becoming much more important. And that's what I take with me in my daily life as well. Yeah.
So it's kind of like what you find on the mat, you're able to respond to or kind of be aware of during your day. It sounds like it might give you like some sort of understanding, like, oh, I'm experiencing a little anxiety today. I'm gonna take that into account. Is that?
Yeah, but also the way, and much more the way you are dealing with obstacles, like can be physical obstacles, but most important, I think, the obstacles of the mind, and how to deal with that on the mat, but then also see that it is a reflection of how you deal with things in daily life as well. And therefore I find the practice so beautiful, because it's something that is really yeah, that it can really change like deep-rooted patterns within yourself, and hopefully also, because I see it like that, like if you practice yourself, and it was also a bit like David was saying, it is also contribution to the practice of dealing with the world, and I hopefully that it also can influence other people as well in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. And how about you, Vikram?
It's interesting because people say, "Oh, how was your yoga class?" And the answer is always like good, hard, tough, easy. But it doesn't really end. How was the asana class? How was the pranayama class? How was the meditation class? So to me, like David said, like Anouk said, it's an extension. It can be both. It can be a state. You're in the state of yoga. It can be a goal. Your goal is yoga, samadhi, moksha, whatever you're working towards, but it's never ending. Patanjali says, right? Kala Nairantarya, Satkara Sevito. It's uninterrupted over a long period of time. So anytime your ego flares up and says, "Oh, I'm so good at yoga," there's folks like David with 4 decades and going strong behind them. You're like, "Oh, I guess long time is still a long time away," or so on and so forth, and uninterrupted, and with reverence. We take so much care of our, $100 yoga mats. We wipe them, we clean them, we put lavender essential oils. So that same reverence should step into the life when the class is over, when the asana is over, when the practice is over. So to me, that's a good reminder of staying true to the practice off the mat, And I think, something that I've seen on the mat, which is translated into real life, is, some things will come easier than the others, some things will stay for longer than the others. But in the end, understanding that all of it is impermanent, I think that's the key. It makes asana practice easy. It makes, people who cut you off, dealing with them easy. I think it prepares you for life. I think I remember telling someone once that I grew up in India. I've got my palm read a zillion times, but still I don't know what's going to happen next. So I think the practice of yoga does not change what's going to come next. Like David was saying, it prepares you so you can handle the impact of the missile, whatever the missile is, or whatever the sweet is that's going to come your way.
I like that you brought up that non-attachment or that impermanence to things, and learning to release or let go of maybe a posture, or not hang on so much to a posture or to your struggle with it, and how that also shows up in your life, like not hanging on to your anger so much, maybe with the person that cuts you off. That's wonderful. Nadine, how about you? How does yoga off the mat show up in your life?
Wow, such rich responses already. Firstly, thank you for having me here. It is certainly an honor and a privilege. And as I listened to my fellow yogis, I sat here just nodding in affirmation. As Anouk said, the mat for me becomes the mirror. If I really want to see what's going on with me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I take it to the mat. And as I often say, the real practice for me is integrating the lessons that are coming through the body so that I can take them out into the world. And that's where the real yoga happens. Yoga is life. And so how yoga has served me is really in deepening in terms of self-awareness. Who am I? What's really going on? What is my body trying to inform me? And over the years, I've been practicing, some 20 odd years. I've moved or transitioned or evolved more from the asana to the pranayama and meditation aspects. And certainly in these last 2 years, nothing has served me greater than to just sit and be still and know. One of the things that I wanted to add also, I think it was a bit of what both David and Vikram said, is that there's the business of yoga and there's the practice of yoga, and they're two very different things. And so as a yogini showing up with integrity, a servant leader wanting to serve from a really potent place, the yoga has helped to inform me as to how I show up in the world. One of the things I often speak of doing my first teacher training at the Shivananda ashram in southern India, in that instant, I recognize that yoga is a viable tool for peace. So if I can embody that peace with each and every encounter I have, be it in traffic, be it at the supermarket, be it with myself, how do I serve from a place of love? And so that's the mission and the lessons for me as far as embodying my practice, taking it off the mat and out into the world.
I love that. Do you feel like your practice has made you like more consistently able to show up as peace, to show up as love in the world?
Absolutely. I believe that's all our natural states as beings, as it were. But what the yoga really did was to enhance the awareness about it so that I become more responsive to life as opposed to being reactionary. And even in those reactionary moments, the practice lets me go, okay, hang on a minute, Nadine, what's going on here? As one of my coaches says, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So I go to the mat and I go, what's going on here? What's the body telling me? And 11 times out of 10, there's a lesson there. And I go, wow, you know, the more I study, the more I know is the less I know, and the less I know is the more I know.
Yeah. Do you find that the meditation practice and the asana practice have similar results, or do you find that one's more effective than the other?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know if I would do a comparative. I guess harmony depends on where I am. There are moments where I'm present that I can get really cognitive and in my head, and so the way I move out of that is by getting into the body. The body keeps the score, so if I can work through the body. And there's some times when I become so that the only thing I can do is sit and connect to that breath and just be with the breath. So it depends on the circumstance, the situation, the time of day.
Beautiful. I love that. It's so contextual, everything. And it's nice to have multiple types of practices to be able to apply depending on what needs we might have on any given day. So the next question is one that's, many students, I think, we understand in a way that yoga is to be practiced all day long. And I love that you brought up the Setudirga Kala Nairantarya Satkaras Evito Dritabhumihi Vikram for a long, long period of time, consistently with reverence, devotion, without interruption. But where should students begin, I guess, is the question when it comes to maybe transitioning. Maybe somebody gets up in the morning, we're doing our asana practice, and then we, get off of our yoga mat and we go into all the different demands and things in our day. What are some tips to being able to remember to practice yoga, or how to integrate these practices? Like as Anouk brought up, the yamas and the niyamas, or whatever aspect, being more present, showing up as love. I'm going to ask you first, Vikram, because you brought up the Sanskrit verse.
I think as lofty as this may sound, but self-inquiry is a must. No matter what style you practice, how much you practice, there has to be some sort of self-inquiry. Anything can be an object of your meditation, right? So if you have the capacity and the perseverance and the experience behind you to use your asana as a tool for self-inquiry, great. I know personally for me, I'm too fidgety. I'm still trying to figure out the pose in my life. So I don't. So I need to sit, or I need to walk in the nature, or sometimes I need to journal. So I think one practical, tangible, helpful hint would be to engage in a dialogue with yourself. Go for a date with yourself, have coffee with yourself, have tea with yourself, whatever you would like to. Anouk spoke about the yamas and niyamas. for the last 15 years, I've been unsuccessfully failing at multiple yamas and niyamas challenge. I challenge myself. I pick one. Initially, I would pick 5. No way, Jose. So I pick one and I still fail. I've been failing successfully for the last 15 years. So that's a good one. Give yourself, pick something. It's a long list. It's a very extensive list. Pick something, challenge yourself, and hold yourself accountable. You would know it, or include friends in it. Renunciation is a big one. We live 2016, the yoga industry was $16 billion worth just in North America. And here we are now 8 years later, right? So yeah, practice renunciation. Everybody does not need to become a celibate monk, buy a japamala and head off to the Himalayas, There's so many things you can give up. So practice renunciation, find out what is it to really live within your means. That's a good way to live your yoga off the mat. And hey, if you have extra, not everybody needs to be, a starving yoga teacher just getting by. If you are doing well for yourself, give it to Yoga Gives Back, give it to other organizations that are doing similar work, right? Like embody that concept of seva. Last one, it's a big one. Faith. Have faith. If you want to have practice, if you want to take your yoga off the mat, have faith. Have some version of divinity grace that speaks to you, and that hold that close to your heart, and let that be the guiding light, and know that, whether the universe or whatever your version of faith is, that shraddha, that bhavna, that feeling, that's important. It's a razor's edge. You can get lost, you can fall off, you can get disillusioned, you can get jaded. So having faith, I think that's a big one.
I love that. The self-reflection, like the swadhyaya, the self-study, like contemplating your behaviors, your actions, asking questions, the faith, the devotion, or believing in a higher power, or even just higher consciousness or something beyond ourselves. And what was the second one?
Renunciation,
Pronunciation. Oh, that's a hard one.
Be an ascetic of some sorts,
Right. Be a person of the needs, not the wants. Yeah, that's good. Those are all really good tips and things that we can actively kind of try to embody off of the mat and even within our practice too. Yeah, great. Wonderful. How about you, David? How can people start to experience yoga in their daily lives off the mat and into the world?
Well, first, people should be forewarned that there's a good chance that yoga is really going to mess up your life. There needs to be some kind of like a warning, because things that were really fun just aren't quite as fun anymore. Come on, let's go party. Will it be smoky there? What time will we be home? I have a yoga class in the morning. Things start to change whether we like it or not. We just wanted to have flexible hamstrings. All of a sudden, we're reading labels on food, and we're making all kind of choices to support our yoga practice because it feels good when we do it. So some of this starts to happen anyway, even if you want it to or you don't want it to. Then you have to ask, like the chicken or the egg, was it the yoga that was changing us, or what was already changing within us that even made us want to think about doing yoga? So both things are there. I look at the practice like this, regardless of the system, whether we're sitting in meditation or doing asana. I think of it as a gardener tilling the soil. If you've ever planted a garden, one of the first things you do, you get a shovel, you turn the earth over, you aerate it, you put compost and nutrients in there, and you create this incredibly fertile environment. That is all that practice does. In and of itself does not mean it's spiritual. It doesn't mean it's anything other than a way to create incredibly fertile ground. What happens next are the seeds we plant in that fertile earth. What will happen if someone does tons of practice or sits in meditation or chants bhajan or performs great austerities and then throws a few ego seeds in their garden patch? They can grow a bigger ego than the average person because of the fertility. So as a practitioner, it's not just the practice and that we're feeling good, but we need to ask, like, what are the seeds I'm planting there? And this is difficult. This is possibly the most challenging thing in all of yoga, is to look with objectivity. And so one trick is to step outside and look at our life as though we're watching someone else's, like you're watching a reality television show. It's easy to spot all the faults in those people's lives and give them perfect advice, right? Because we're separate from it. So if we can step outside, look at our own life, and consciously accept the flaws, because there's going to be many of them, and have patience with ourselves, because it's just because we know we need to be patient doesn't mean we will get it every time. So it's a reflective process. It's always called a practice. It's never a performance. We don't stand onto the mat and say, now I perform. Today I practice. And so it's an ongoing process. It requires a long time, but it can be fun as well. And I always give people this advice: find a way to practice in such a fashion that you enjoy it. Then it's not really a discipline. You'll want to do it. And then throughout the day, yeah, we made a bunch of mistakes. That's a given. The goal of yoga is to try to not make the same ones over and over and over. And even if we do, keep recognizing these patterns and make little adjustments where we need to. And sometimes it's just small changes that add up over a long period of time. It doesn't have to be a dramatic overnight thing. So gain some sense of humor about the journey, find a way to enjoy it, be a little patient, and the yoga will do its work.
Oh, that's so good. Those are such good gems. I think sometimes we get so serious about our practice, we forget to have joy and to enjoy it and to have it like feed our soul and our spirit. And then it becomes, like you say, there's some discipline to do it, but it doesn't become like a harsh discipline. It becomes something we want to do. You also spoke about again, like that self-reflection, like being able to look and examine ourselves with some sense of objectivity, which I think is really important for growth, and taking note of where we're maybe falling short and where we want to put some more energy in. And I love this idea of a process and being patient with ourselves too in the growth and in the process. Those are amazing tips. How about you, Nadine?
Wow, so many ways to respond to this question. One of the questions I certainly ask myself is, can I be with myself and like the company I keep? And so being on the mat, being in the practice, allows me to be the witness of myself and to look at myself with some compassion, some humility, and a lot of fun. I do have a tendency to take myself way too seriously sometimes. And it's an honor and a blessing to have this gift that reminds me, be gentle with myself, cut myself some slack. One of my mantras that I love is that I come to the practice of yoga, not so that I may be perfect, but so that I may make peace with my imperfections. And we arrive at this sacred practice through different avenues. Some of us come at it through a physical realm, some come through a heart or an emotional realm. Wherever the door opens for you, enter. And trust yourself and trust the process, that the gifts and the lessons that are yours will emerge. Vikram spoke about journaling. I'm a huge advocate of integrating the journaling with the practice. And the journaling, especially writing, handwriting, where it flows through the body and pours out onto the paper. The same way that when I approach that mat and ask my body, how do I serve you today? What is being asked of me? And let the body begin to move and see where it wants to go and learn from the body. So yeah, I think that's sort of my response to that question in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great. Would you take time in the morning before practice or after practice? Do you find the journalings more effective at any particular time during the day, the end of the day?
I am a morning person. I am usually up at 4:45 to sit in my meditation. I usually journal after that, and then I move into the physical realm. Ideally, if one is able to do both morning and evening, I find, well, let me speak for self here. I'm really good at opening up the day with my practice and my meditation. And by the end of the day, it's like, ugh. And so if I'm able to maintain that cadence and take it both morning and evening, and just write whenever, you know, sometimes an idea will come through me and I'll just make a note somewhere and then I'll revisit it later on.
Yeah, beautiful.
But ideally in the morning, setting ourselves up for a really beautiful day ahead.
Yeah. Anouk, what tips do you have for people trying, students, practitioners trying to integrate these, I mean, tangible, but maybe less obvious practices into their daily lives?
Yeah, I think a lot of things already have been said. It's beautiful to hear all these tips and suggestions. And I think, yes, indeed, it all comes down to self-inquiry, the self-study, being compassionate with yourself, and also realizing that that's at least what I realized when I started the practice, and also give as a tip to the students that this is a practice that you're going to do for the rest of your life. So if one day doesn't work the way you wanted it to work, that's fine. So there's always a new beginning. There's a new start. You can do it every time. You can do it over again if you want to. So I think having that, giving yourself a little bit of space in that is good. And also to make it very practical, so very realistic, and to see how you can fit it in your daily schedule. Like Vikram was saying, we don't have to be these monks that are living in a monastery on a mountain and are meditating the whole day. So if you have a very busy daily life, it is also important to see how you can fit that in, because if you want to keep up this practice for the rest of your life, you, as David was saying, you better make that it is enjoyable too. So one of the tips, that was one of the tips I got from you, Harmony, was to take a few moments in a day to just sit still with yourself, and maybe do a little meditation, or just a very short pranayama or breathing exercise, just to connect again with your inner self, and to check in and to see what's going on and how you feel and all the things that are going on inside of you, and then see if you can take that with you throughout the day. So I think it's important to make it very small and tangible, as you were saying, so that you can just keep up with this for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that because sometimes we get really caught up with our morning routine, and then sometimes we get caught up with our evening routine, and it's like there's all this space in the middle, and we can take these little mini moments of mindfulness, whether we're in the car or in an office, or standing in line at the grocery store, and just tune in. Sometimes we forget the breath and our ability to tune in and find sensation and find the quiet space inside ourselves is available at any time during the day. It doesn't have to be part of, a big routine. We can just connect and go in. And I think that's such a wonderful tip to share for everyone, that it's sometimes hard to remember to do, but really valuable when we do remember to do it. Well, thank you for sharing, Anouk. So the last couple of years, I think, have been, quite challenging for many of us who practice yoga regularly. We've been doing different things online. The whole global situation with the pandemic and COVID, maybe even we experienced COVID ourselves, and, recovering from that. And so my next question has to do with, how has your practice changed or been affected, or how have you adapted your practice to these maybe more stressful time, maybe even like a space where you've been grieving or suppressing grief or not able to process loss, trauma, challenge. And how would you suggest guiding students? So maybe with your own personal practice, and then how you could suggest guiding students. And I'm going to ask Nadine first, because you spoke a little bit about this at the beginning, about the adapting different practices for different feelings when you get up in the morning.
I can still remember the start of the pandemic. In fact, I had just returned to Bali from being in South Africa teaching on their Spirit Festival. And I returned to Bali, I think, on the 10th of March, and the gates closed on the 11th of March. And I sort of chuckled to myself because I had some personal issues, family issues in Jamaica that I had been avoiding. And I said, well, the universe has a sense of humor, because now I'll be required to confront them front and center. And so for the first 9 months of the pandemic, while I was in Bali, twice a week I held women's circles. Women showed up from across the world. We begin with a guided meditation, some breath work, a meditation, and have a discussion around a particular topic. And we really developed this deep, intimate global family. And all I can say is, if I weren't thankful for the gifts and the lesson before, I certainly have had them reinforced in the last couple of years. At the end of last year, I then traveled to Jamaica, and this is a largely Christian society, and there's a fair degree of pushback with regards to yoga. That's shifting and evolving, but it's still there. And so what I have seen, especially in the last several months with the rollout of this vaccine, etc., is a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental health issues, and a lot more people reaching out, wanting to sit in meditation. Along with another teacher here, we run morning meditations on IG Live, and to see the ripple that's being created, and people just wanting a safe space that allows them to be vulnerable, that allows them to be intimate with themselves and others, where they feel they will not be judged. And something Vikram responded to in the last question about faith, prayer, devotion. And so really weaving both the yogic practices, or integrating with the largely Christian philosophy, and saying, you know, meditation is when we get to hear what the God of our understanding has to share with us, and prayer is when we speak to that God. So that has really, to see the shift that's happening here at the moment is pretty exciting. A young woman here has recently opened a studio, and you know, there are many have thought, oh my goodness, she's crazy. Who would drop into this business at this time? And already her studio is too small. So you know, what's that beautiful saying? Luck is when crisis meets opportunity, or something to that. Being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and willing to like step up and respond and listen to. I love that. That gave me goosebumps listening to you. It's so important to just listen, but you know, also communicate and be courageous. And those women's circles, I think community's really been important for a lot of us, and connecting with people.
I think just to conclude, one of my favorite words, that South African word, Ubuntu. I am because we are. And it doesn't matter where we come from, that's kind of where we find ourselves in this moment.
Yeah, I love that. Ubuntu?
Ubuntu. U-B-U-N-T-U. I am because we are.
Gorgeous. Anouk, how about you? How have you been changing and adapting your practice? Thanks, Kayoko. She put it in the chat.
Ubuntu, yes. Yeah, I think this aspect of Ubuntu is very important. so what I noticed in my work as a psychotherapist as well, in the last 1.5 years during the pandemic, is that there is a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of loneliness as well, and a lot of isolation, which creates other mental issues as well. So that aspect of connection is so important. And what I found myself, especially at the start of the pandemic, the lack of that, of being together, like practicing in a shala together, or just having that connection with students or with fellow practitioners, was much more difficult. And so before the pandemic, I used to also practice by myself, and that was fine. But during that pandemic, I noticed that it is so important to be connected, and of course that's also the essence of yoga, right? So that sense of connection, is really important. So what it changed for me is that even more than before, I think it's really important to be together in whatever form that is. So that can be practicing together, but it can also be like in sharings or these women's circles that Nadine was mentioning. And that's, I think, the force and the power of, in essence, it's just love, right? It's sharing that energy and in that way, making the world a better place, especially in difficult times like these.
Yeah, it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about for you, Vikram?
I think primarily I would say so. We've been here since January of 2020, and very similar to Nadine, we were wrapping up a retreat. The retreat finished March 20th, and 22nd we got hit by a pretty severe lockdown. Kind of like getting up at 4 a.m. not to practice, but to go walk for about 1 kilometer and maybe come back with like a bushel of carrots if you're lucky, like wasn't planned, Goa's not that big. And things are fine, things are great now, relatively speaking. So I think a renewed sense of gratitude, to be able to kind of come out on the other side, if there is another side, to be able to be on this call, to be of sound body and mind, to still be in a position to share personal experience, teachings, learnings. So I think definitely a lot of gratitude, something that got reinforced, being here, the state of the migrant workers here. Kayoko will tell you, India was in a bad shape. I think everybody in the community and otherwise knows it. So one, I would say a lot of gratitude, a lot of acceptance, an increased sense of tolerance, obviously all of them spilling into your asana practice as well. And then maybe a renewed vigor to kind of put something back even more, to realize that, whoa, that was a close call, and here I am, I'm okay, and things are fine. And the practice kept me sane, the practice kept me going. All the more reason to kind of pay it forward and pay it back. Sharing that with colleagues, sharing that with students, sharing that with fellow teachers, that, this was a great example. The community oftentimes gets called to put in a collective effort, but they kind of die out, very quickly. A flavor of the month, the charity of the month, the theme of the month. But here we are, here we have an opportunity to do something sustainably for a very long time, because all of us have experienced some version of this, No one was spared this. Not the super rich, not the migrant workers, no one, everybody is going through their version of this pandemic. So yeah, this sense of sangha, this sense of camaraderie, this sense of bonding, that yeah, we're in this together, and what are we going to do about it for ourselves and for others? Yeah.
Was there a particular way that you were able to support the people in your community that were like struggling so much?
Yeah, it's Goa has a lot of migrant workers. The work is very seasonal here. So food camps, soup kitchens, financial assistance, call out to helps, kind of sharing. There's always extra, right? When you come down to it, there's always something that in your pantry, in your closet, that you don't need and someone could benefit from it, and asking people to do that. So it's pretty selfless, right? It's you don't have to feel shy about asking someone for help to help someone else, you know. If you're not the recipient, it's easier to ask. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like people were really coming together in like a really tangible way where they're sharing their resources and offering them and really like physically supporting each other.
Yeah, old school barters. I'll give you a couple of garlics for a mango. You know, so yeah, simple living.
Yeah, incredible. And like really the yoga in action too. Yeah. David, you've been very busy during the pandemic. How has it affected your own practice, and how have you been supporting students?
You mean busy because I've been on Zoom?
Yes.
Yeah.
You've been zooming everywhere.
You know, I was one of those people said, oh, I will never teach online. I need to be in the room with people. That's ridiculous. That's too much separation, until this happened. And then I embraced it because I realized, well, first someone pointed out, they said, David, you have DVDs. What's the difference? I was like, oh yeah. Basically, Zoom is a DVD where the teacher can see you. Yeah, but it gave a human connection. And that's something everyone has mentioned, the need for that. And more, I'm describing yoga to be medicine. It's our medicine, regardless of the system. And so this is our medication. But it is also physician, heal thyself. So sometimes we have to adjust the prescription. Even in Ashtanga, people think Ashtanga is just one way. There are so many ways to do it. Even Pattabhi Jois said minimum daily practice, 3 Surya Namaskara A, 3B, and the final 3 postures of closing sequence. That's 10 minutes. We can take the practice and administer the medication to gain some personal benefit. However, there's a slight risk with yoga becoming an incredibly selfish pursuit. It's all about me, me, me. I want this. I want more. Granted, we need some of that. When you put the letters ISH at the end of a word, it means pertaining to. So something that is selfish is okay. It pertains to self. However, if that's all it is, it becomes detrimental. And it's our duty to then increase the prana in our body and then share it. Yeah. And so we take the medicine not only for ourselves, but to be a positive influence in the world around us, to try to shine whatever light we've got. It can be in give a mango to someone, or a smile, or whatever we can. And if we were to look at something in a bit of a philosophical or esoteric manner, it's impossible to be alone. It is not possible to be alone. If you look at the Earth from outer space, there's a thin veneer, like a skin on an apple, around this globe, and that is our atmosphere. It's not static. There's no such thing as American air, and Jamaican air, and Indian air, and European air. It flows around the planet freely without discrimination. I created a program once back in 1999. It's called One World, One Breath. It is impossible to be separate. The planet itself is breathing, but as we are sitting here, it connects us with the past, the ancient civilizations, the Aboriginals, hundreds, thousands of years ago, were breathing this same air, the oxygen molecules moving in and out of their body, floating around this planet. Right now, where we're speaking, we're not in the same room together. We're all sharing the same breath on this planet at this moment, wherever we are. It connects us with the future. The air we're breathing now, the same stuff coming in and out of our body, will float around this planet, and future generations will be sharing in that same breath. My wife's father died when she was only 15. He died in a car accident. Well, before his death, for one of their birthdays, he blew up a balloon. Shelley's mom kept that balloon because his breath was in the balloon.
Mm.
So you start thinking that our breath is connecting all of us. So even if we are not in physical proximity of one another, if we just become very cognizant to the reality of our situation, we understand I'm not alone. Yeah, we're connected through this simple act of breathing. And in my mind, breathing with awareness is a spiritual act because it connects all of us, regardless of religion or gender or sexual preference or any other thing. We all breathe. No one says, I don't breathe, or I breathe through my ears or whatever. There's all kind of differences we have, but there's this commonality of breath. And for me, that's the fulcrum of all of the other practices. Without focus on breath, I wonder, at least within the realms of yoga, is it still yoga? We need to have that. So this is a way to feel connected and appreciate, obviously, the physical proximity that things are opening a little more. I taught my first in-person class a couple of weeks ago, the first time in 18 months that I've been in a room with anyone else doing yoga. And it was great. I realized one of the things I missed was the smells. Funk. I kind of missed the funk, yeah. But I'm grateful for gaining a greater appreciation for people, greater appreciation for subtleties, a greater appreciation for the fragility of our life and the planet, and that every moment is a blessing and a gift, and we should be appreciative and then do our best to help those that are suffering, because there's so many.
Perfect. Yeah. You answered my next question too, which is how do we be a force of compassion and love and light in the world amidst so many polarizing forces? And I think you really brought it together with this focus on breath and interconnectedness of ourselves. Do you have, we had a question from somebody in the audience, Lily, who was asking something specifically that I would love to hear your thoughts on, David, in amidst of this political polarization and all of the extremes that we're experiencing of views. How can we really try to be more united, or how can we respond in a way that's compassionate and loving and not adding to the anger and division?
Well, something I've observed, and it's not 100% across the board, but maybe you've seen this as well. In the realms of yoga and spiritual practices, we're all like, oh, we're the most compassionate, we're understanding, we're loving. And it's only true when we're surrounded by people that think and look exactly like us. As soon as someone has a different political view, or they're not a vegetarian, or they're wearing leather, or whatever, they're driving a big Hummer, all of a sudden we're like, ugh. Now where's the union? If it's only involving people that think and look and act like us, where's the yoga? It's easy when that's the case. I grew up in Texas doing yoga. In the late 60s, early 70s, the neighbors called the police because they thought we were worshiping the devil. And Nadine, you were talking about in Jamaica. I grew up in this, in America, Texas is the buckle of the Bible Belt. It's like it's heavy, like it was a big thing. So we have to have compassion and understanding, even when people have a completely different idea of us. Otherwise, we just foster this, we're right, they're wrong. Politically speaking, it used to be considered a great strength and an asset if someone was able to negotiate with someone with a different opinion and find common ground. Now this is considered weakness. But the real strength and the real proof of our understanding of yoga is how we can interact with people of different political views and so forth. I'm not saying this is easy. And sometimes it means just shutting up. Because if two people have totally polar up, just say, okay, what else do you want to talk about? Because it's not going to be a discussion. It's two people that already have very firm, fixed ideas trying to convince the other person to think like them. And that's even where I come back to the breath. There's all the differences. Find some common thing, whatever it is, even a small thing. Hey, we both breathe. Let's just take a breath. Or find, oh, you both like the color green, or you both like pizza. Find some commonality and build upon that. But we focus on the differences. Sure, there's going to be differences. And I noticed in the chat, I think it was Lily, the same question. How do you deal if in a relationship, one person's a yogi and the other's not? I even have an issue with calling ourselves a yogi. I am not a yogi. To claim one as a yogi, yogis were extreme, man. They slept very little, ate very little, performed incredible austerities. There were yogis who would only eat if food fell near their body, and they didn't sit by their favorite restaurant. Yeah, it was extreme. So to say that I'm a yogi because I do some asanas, or we have some, I don't know, Lululemon clothes or something. We're attempting to practice yoga. I'm a practitioner of yoga. In relationships, I don't think it's necessary to seek someone else that is a copy of ourselves. My wife and I are very different. Harmony, you know my wife, Shelley. We're very different people. It's okay to have a relationship with someone that's different. You learn to respect each other's differences and find the commonality in the center, which is love. Regardless of which political party someone's involved with, I suspect that all of them just want their children to be healthy and to happy and to have food and shelter. Beneath all of the differences is the common desire to love and be loved. And so look at someone else with differences, try to understand, and even if you can't, just accept that's the way they are. You're going to have to love them the way they are. And do your best to emulate the qualities that you believe in. And also accept that not everyone's going to respect that. My dear friend David Williams, and this was back when I wrote my, or came out with the videotapes. I came out with these videos, and it was considered incorrect to even do this at the time. I called David and I said, wow, David, you know, world of yoga, people are gonna shoot me down, you know, when I come out with these videos. And David Williams, he's from North Carolina, so he speaks like that. He says, well, David, you know, if you stick your head above the crowd, somebody's bound to throw a tomato. So in life, the choices we make, even if they're different, we accept that there's going to be some criticism, but be patient with people that have a difference of opinion. We shouldn't have gained some kind of superiority complex because we do yoga and suddenly we're better than everyone else. Everyone is doing the best they can. Yeah. And I give my parents credit for that feeling and that knowledge I have inside, because they were open-minded people, you know, that taught me to treat people for the quality of their character, not by the color of their skin or their social status or any other thing, but look at the quality of their character and the integrity of their personality. You know? And so we want to seek those things and be a little patient with others and ourselves.
So many gems of wisdom in that. I will want to watch the recording again. It's beautiful, so beautiful. I love that, like judging by the quality of the character, you know, again, it's all the things you can't see. And I know that's one of David Williams' definitions of yoga. Yoga is all the things that you can't see that you often talk about, and how we can maybe penetrate into the more meaningful, permanent, you know, qualities and nature of people and at least love or respect or cherish that essence.
I just want to say, I apologize if I went on too long just then, because I would love to hear from these other people as well. But I'm looking at the time going like, I don't know where the time went.
We have another 15 minutes, so don't worry.
Oh, goody. Okay. I want to be sure that I get to hear these other luminaries speak.
Yeah, no problem. So Anouk, how about you? How do you think we can be a healing balm in the world, bring more light, more love, more acceptance, heal these divisions rather than contribute to them?
Yeah. Well, I always love that quote from Gandhi, like be the change you want to see in the world. And I think it's about that just by embodying or being that what you would love to see, I think, or I hope we can create some kind of ripple effect together. So I don't have the idea that as a human being we can change somebody else or a system or the whole world, but we can change ourselves and we can work on that. And I think if the whole world would do that, then things could change. And I think that's a starting point. So it always starts with yourself. And I think focusing on what I said a lot of times already, focusing on compassion starts also with focusing on self-compassion and self-love, taking the time for important things in life, creating time and space for connection. That just having, like today I was in the supermarket, and it was very nice. This woman, she was talking to another woman, so I'm behind the counter, and she said, I'm going to quit my job because I've been working here for 25 years and now I want to work in healthcare because I believe it's very important that people are serving more nowadays. And she was already like, I think in her 50s. And I said, wow, that's a beautiful decision. And how did you come to that decision? And she said, like, I saw how my parents died and how much care they needed at the end of their lives. And I think it's very important just to do something that you really believe in and to do good to the world. So this was just a very small example, but I think, what is really important in that is to follow your heart and to serve, but serve in the way that is that is good for you. So that doesn't mean like that we all have to be Mother Teresa or whatever, but just like I said before, make it very practical, make it very realistic, very tangible, that it also fits in your daily life. But I think there are so many little small things we already can do on a daily basis if we just take the time and the space to be aware of that.
Yeah, so nice, that emphasis on serving and giving of our time, our resources, our energy, and all the little opportunities every day that we have to embody that quality of being of service, or being a healing presence or a helping presence. And that's so important. Thank you so much. Nadine, how about for you? How do you foresee us going forward from here as yoga practitioners, as spiritual beings?
I got completely consumed with the two responses so far and made a few notes. The first note I have here is seek to understand rather than to be understood. And that's really been a guiding principle for me. Prior to my entry into the yoga community and world, as it were, I served with the UN for many years, living in cultures and countries that were diametrically opposed to where I came from. And one of the things that really helped to anchor me was really to arrive as a guest and to observe and to really understand the dynamics, as opposed to trying to superimpose my thoughts, beliefs, philosophies on the community that I had come to serve. I remember one time in Uganda, we were having discussions about building wells for a particular village, water wells. And when we went out into the community, so here we are, all of us bright-eyed and bushy-tailed wanting to save the world. And when we went out and did the evaluation report, the women didn't want wells. What they wanted were little bus stops with sheds over them so that as they journeyed to the well, they could sit and meet and communicate comfortably. I think, you know, the bit about how do we deal with opposites, and I really loved what David said, because we're all really one and the same, breathing the same air, trying to figure it out, you know, at a basic level, keeping roofs over our heads, our families fed, etc. And I remember during my time of living in the Netherlands, something that really struck me, where Anne Frank said her belief that ultimately we're all good people. Life comes along and throws us a few curveballs and we react in one way or another. I want to just touch on two things that I've noticed during the last couple of years. So in the midst of this pandemic, while we were all locked away 2020, sitting at home, we had the eruption in the United States that rippled out into the world of Black Lives Matter. And I spoke on quite a few platforms around that. And one of the things I felt in every fiber of my being is that finally we had an opportunity to hear and to listen and to hold space. And so I really showed up in that place of serving. And as a yogi practitioner, this has been one of the greatest gifts for me as far as the practice goes. No matter where I am, whether I'm in Switzerland, India, Kenya, Sudan, Jamaica, I am just a human being on a mat without that divisiveness. So for the first time, certainly in my lifetime, we were faced with a genuine opportunity to heal this maya, this separation based on skin color. We've done a lot of work. We still have a fair bit of work to do. And the other separateness that I really saw, and certainly here in Jamaica, was around people's choices vis-a-vis whether or not they wanted to take a vaccine. And so what we actually had happening here is what I can only describe as medical apartheid, because we're now at the point where half the country, more or less, have done the vaccine. And here is what has happened in Jamaica. You have a 96% Black country. You have a high unemployment rate, a high illiteracy rate. And then all of a sudden you have people being told by the government, we care for you, so you know you must do this vaccine. And people are going, hang on a minute. I've been trying to feed 6 children in my house. I have no running water. I have no electricity. I don't have a job. And now you're trying to tell me you're trying to save me? And so it really created, because there's a mistrust and a distrust, you know? And so again, even in conversations, as I think David said, you know, where it's like one or the other, and you absolutely, one couldn't hear the other. And so the choice I made was, this is not a discussion I'm prepared to engage in. I am prepared to support myself and others in how we move through this process, the uncertainty, the anxiety, et cetera, but this divisiveness is actually not going to help us to move further together. And 2 more things. Designated Survivor. I don't know if you've seen this on Netflix. It basically it's a movie, and the Capitol gets blown up, and there are 2 designated survivors. And the person who sits in the role of the president has no political whatsoever, no political whatever. But what I learned from that movie was that every decision he had to make, and you think of it, it was happening around him, he returned to the human condition. So the Capitol blew up. He went down there. He checked in with the firemen. How's your family? How's your children? And it was really coming back. And so he led from that human place. And so one of the things I try to remind myself every day is to remember that I'm human, and to really lead from that place. Because what the world needs more and more is us just showing up in our human selves, you know, and we'll figure it out along the way, rather than the judgment, it's my way or the highway. And so it is. I think I went in several places, but thank you.
I love that. That reminded me of what David was saying too, connecting back to like the things that we all cherish and are striving for, and, you know, feeding our families and taking care of people we love and breathing and staying alive, all those basic human instincts that we all share, you know, being here on the planet, connecting back to those. How about you, Vikram? Please share with us how we can step up and be a light in the world.
I'm really glad I went last on this one, because, you know, so many things I resonated with, you know, that everyone else said. But I'll say maybe a couple of things. Is that, you know, you've heard this before. It's from Ramana Maharishi, right? How do you treat the others? There are no others, you know. And as you move into this new progressive world, you know, my name says he, him. I do a lot of race equity work, appropriation work. We live in a label world, you know. Hi, it used to be simple. Hi, my name is Vikram. But now it's, hi, my name is Vikram. I'm able-bodied, I'm cisgendered, you know, everything else that I'm middle income, accessible. And that's great. I'm all about that. You know, I'm all for that. There's a lot of voices that have been suppressed for a very long time. But what's missing is, at the end of it is, but I'm also pure consciousness, just like you. But I'm also duality, non-duality, doesn't matter. You can take a label at the end of it, but I'm also that, you know. I can go on and on, you know, about personal embodiment of the yogic scriptures, but it's true, right? If I am pro something, that means by default I'm anti something. You know, the raga dvesha, the attachment and the aversion, we are nothing but a sum of our likes and dislikes. You know, like David said, we are very compatible till the setting changes from the yoga shala to, I don't know, the bar down the street. And suddenly you're in a place, you could be lost on an island, you know? So it's impossible, at least in my personal experience so far, to kill the ego, to get rid of the ego. You need it, right? I'm not looking for a complete ego annihilation right now. So I'm hoping to find a narrative that's healthy, a narrative that is not solely driven by my likes and dislikes, a narrative that helps me live out my dharma, my truest sense of being. And irrespective of what that looks like, you know, irrespective of what the color of my skin, my gender affiliation or the lack thereof, or anything that I can tangibly associate with, at the end of it, there is not much that separates me from you or anyone else. So if I can go with that universal dharma, that universal collective duty, that there is no separation, and it's like samadhi, it's a very lofty goal. It ain't going to come easy. It's definitely not coming over this weekend. It's a lifelong practice, right? So if I can move from that premise, if I can understand that I am a sum of my likes and dislikes, and that might be very different from what you are, and that's okay. We can talk about pizzas, breath, pranayama, you know, anything that we can, that's okay. We can work towards a tangible, cohesive, peaceful coexistence, even if it's with your partner, you know, or even if it's someone who supports someone who you do not support, you know, understanding that there is more to that, you know, that will finish when this body is burned or is buried. All those likes and dislikes will be gone, right? They're temporary too. They're transient too. So why give them so much importance?
Yeah. So I love that quote from Ramana Maharshi. And yeah, we're so everything around us. I always like that idea of like all the people that are around us are there to help us grow and evolve. And they're also a reflection of something in ourselves. So if there's things we don't like in other people, it's often something within ourselves that we need to kind of work on, and using that as a sign of what is, you know, what we need to focus on for our own growth, rather than, oh, this person needs to change or they need to, you know, be different. It's like, well, why is it bothering me, and what is in me that I need to work on in order to be able to be present and you know, have full love and you know, cherish these other people.
Yeah, I guess the only last thing I want to say is that I don't want that to be like a washout that don't take a stance. Please, by all means, I have lots of ethical and moral stance, you know, that I stand by. And sometimes my truth might not align with yours, you know, but that's again your truth and my truth, and they might be separate. There is only one universal truth, right? And that's the consciousness truth. So that's okay. And that's when I separate myself from you, the situation, the person, the political party, whatever the case may be. But that again is okay, because that's still again my truth, and that's okay.
Yeah. And it's just so beautiful. I just wanted to share one other thing for myself. What I feel like has helped me a lot through these, you know, challenging times to work with difficult people or difficult situations is that loving kindness meditation, and really like taking time each day, especially if you're confronting someone who's particularly challenging on a regular basis, to, you know, send them metta, send them loving kindness. It's always been a very healing practice for me. So I'd just love to share that with anyone listening who is looking for something that can help them through these difficult times if they're coming up against forces of opposition. And I just also wanted to thank you all so much. It was just so wonderful to have this conversation with you all. I want to keep going and going, but we can't, because whoever is coming on next, it's their turn. And so thank you for joining, for your time, for your energy, and all your wisdom. It was so beautiful.
Thank you, Harmony. Thanks to the rest of you. Love, respect.
Thank you
Hope to
so
see you
much.
in person.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
For now, big virtual hug. Yeah. Can't wait till we get the real one.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry, I just lost the internet for a second. So, but this was really, really incredible session, and a lot of people from around the world are tuning in and sending messages. And I just felt this is like really so special that we can do this, thanks to Yoga Gives Back's mission and everybody supporting it. And like you said, it was so special that we all came together. So thank you so much.
Kayoko, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Quickly?
Yeah.
I think that a whole nother panel could be some issues that Nadine was touching on.
Mhm.
Yeah, in the last bit. Just that when she was talking about Black Lives Matter, but then there was a tendency in the world of yoga, yes, but we all matter, but that's missing the point. We're missing the point. It's not that we have to acknowledge reality, because all lives aren't treated equally.
Mhm.
We can speak spiritually, but it's not the reality that people are living. I'm married to a Black woman also. Yeah, so understanding both sides of this issue and to understand why it is important to say something like that, and not just, pardon the expression, but whitewash over it and saying, yes, but we're all, you know, equal. Yeah, so it's maybe fertile ground for another conversation in greater depth.
Yes, I really appreciate that. This, you know, I just listening to you all, everybody has different accent, coming from different place, different culture, but talking about humanitarian, universal topics in an honest way. I think I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, David. Let's do another one. Thank you so much.
Well, now I feel like I ought to talk in accent. I'll talk in Texas next time.
Yeah, right. Okay, I guess we have to move on to the next panel. So next segment. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
And this will be-
Kayoko.
Thank you, Kayoko.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.